Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
And I'm John Gaver.
And we are this week's edition of the FAIRtax Guys. Where's your scrolling banner, Scarborough?
Well, I didn't know on the three shot if I needed to have that.
All right, well, I'll give you a pass on the three shot. And now you're going to duck out of the frame and go get it.
But I got my FAIRtax shirt on.
Yeah, there we go. Right. Now we're all set. And if you are watching on one of the video streams, you can see we have a guest with us. If you are listening to one of the audio streams only, you'll have to go get the video streams and see we are talking to John Gaver, who most of you who have been watching the program for any length of time will recognize at one time when he lived in Texas. John, I think you were the most active FAIRtax volunteer in the country and were responsible for more candidates signing the FAIRtax pledge than the whole rest of the movement put together when you lived there. And
I did some work on it.
You sure did. You're now in Panama. As you can tell from the background, he has written some books as well about taxation. And we'll kind of hold that thought to near the end of the program, John. We'll give you some time to talk about a little bit of that right now. But the reason we got you on this week was something that you wrote to Jim Bennett a couple of days ago. Jim Bennett, the FAIRtax Grassroots Director at the national level, really caught my eye. You were talking about people that try to throw you off track when you were explaining the FAIRtax to them. And you've got a neat little tool for getting everything back on track. So just go ahead and elaborate on that entire situation for a bit, if you would.
Okay, well, I've spoken to a lot of groups. I've spoken on numerous radio programs, including some very conservative and some very liberal. So I've even spoken to pachyderm clubs where some of these people didn't like the idea of the FAIRtax because they thought, well, it's going to impact my business. I'm a CPA and it's going to affect my business. And so I was getting a lot of pushback. And what happens is that once the FAIRtax argues itself. It just makes sense. And once you start making points, the detractors come in and start trying to find ways to slow you down from making your points. And one of the things they do is try to say, well, what about this family? What about that family? They're trying to find things that where someone might be hurt by the FAIRtax. And usually it's not that they're trying to find someone who's going to be hurt by the FAIRtax, but they're trying to slow you down. If they can keep you communicating and calculating during all this time, then you're not making points. Well, I found a way to score points while I'm giving them this information. I created the FAIRtax Calculator for iOS. Sorry, I don't have one for Android. I don't have an Android phone. And I don't want to learn another programming interface. So this is the only one I've done. If you see the screen now, can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. This little logo right here, the no IRS, that's the FAIRtax Calculator logo. This is the one for the iPhone. This is for iPad. Let me close this one up. I don't really need them all. And also, oops, what did I do there? Didn't mean to do that.
Get back to the same here. I think we're good.
Okay. We've got the FAIRtax Calculator in Excel. So if you do have an Android phone, and you have a spreadsheet on it, then you can use the Excel version, which does the same basic thing. And I'm going to get rid of that one too. I don't need that up. And I'm going to say, no, don't save it. Okay, so what I'm going to be working with is the iPad version, and click on the IRS logo. Actually, the screen that comes up is this one. The first time you open it up, it'll come up with this screen that tells you how to use the calculator. Be sure if you're using it that you get the latest one. It's updated every year, sometime around the middle of January, after Health and Human Services announces their new poverty guidelines. It reminds you that you only need 4 pieces of information, which helps you if you're arguing the point out that you only need 4 pieces of information. the annual family spending on new retail goods and services, the location of your residence, in other words, the lower 48, Hawaii or Alaska, the number of adults in the home, and the number of children in your home. Tells you how to operate it and everything. I typically just click right into here and then click continue to calculator. And this is the basic calculator. The top section is your spending. And these are just pickers. You scroll these pickers up and down. So it starts off with the default of $50,000 in spending, but you can move it up. And as you do that, you'll notice this bottom section down here changes. The middle section is your size of your family and where you live. So it starts off with one adult, no children in the lower 48 states. So I'm sitting here with somebody saying, well, what about the single mom who makes $30,000 a year? Well, as soon as he says single mom, I went to one right here who makes $30,000 a year. And what about her? I said, well, remember, now I've already got the information. You'll see down here in the bottom, I've already got the information. Well, I'll say, now just remember, can we agree that, well, how much does she pay right now? Well, she hits all these breaks and everything, so she'd only pays 1 or 2%. Okay, 1% plus 7.65% payroll tax, and right under the fair tax, she's paying 7.33%. Not only have I answered the person's question, but I've just impressed everybody else who's listening with how quickly I've done it, how simple it is. And the answer that I almost always get is, well, you can't be sure it's going to be exactly that amount. And I can tell them, actually, yes, you said $30,000 in spending. Well, 23% of $30,000 is $6,900. There it is in the bottom of my screen. That if she has one child in the lower 48 states, her prebate's going to be $4,701.20. There's no other number that can possibly be. You subtract those two numbers, you get $2,198.80. That's her net fair tax, and that is 7.33% of $30,000. It is that simple. And when people see that, it's like, oh. And of course, the detractor immediately says, well, what about the millionaire or something? Okay, millionaire, what about him? How much does he make? Yeah. 5 million, 10 million. Let's go for somebody who's making 10 million a year. And I can run that up to, here I've got 9,999,000 is the max that it goes. How many's in the family? 2 adults, no children. He's an empty nester. Okay, 22.93%. That's his total tax based on his spending. And when Bill Gates fills up his jet, or Elon Musk, goes out and buys a bottle of Krug Plus d'Abonnet or something, a couple of $1,000, every time they spend that money, they're paying that fair tax at 22.93%, because that family's prebate is only $6,927.60. And I've got all my talking points right here on my laptop, on my iPad or my iPhone. It's that quick.
You made this for advocates of the fair tax when you go out and talk to people, as much as you've made it for the common individual, the common citizen. This is an excellent tool for someone who's out there pushing the streets to talk about the benefits of the fair tax.
Absolutely. That was kind of why I did it. Is I was at a Houston Pachyderm Club meeting, and I was getting this kind of pushback. And I realized if I had something like this, I could have just snapped right quick. Fortunately, and I was just very lucky, I knew the numbers for the ones that the people tend to use most often, and they didn't throw a curveball at me. So I was able to answer the question quickly, but I didn't have all of this information at the bottom here completely handy. I just knew I had memorized these bottom two numbers for the single mom, the family of 4 making 100,000 a year, and the millionaires. I was able to throw that out at them. But Sometimes I've had people, what about this? What about that? What about the other? And the more they challenge on what about this or that, the more it's scoring points for the FAIRtax, because people realize it's that simple. I'm able to answer the question and throw the exact numbers up there. So $9,999,000, 23% of that is $2,299,770. I know that factually right away. Everything else is simply calculated.
I tell you what, it's amazing. I remember back to the Money Magazine study in the mid 80s where they asked 50 different tax preparers, what does this family owe in income taxes, and gave them their, a hypothetical financial situation. Of the 50 different income tax preparers, they got 49 different answers, with a tremendous range between the most and the least that they would owe on that thing. So with its exemptions and exclusions and deductions and credits just constantly changing all the time, it is impossible to determine under the income tax what any particular family is going to owe in any one particular year, because they keep changing it. But I mean, here in less than 15 seconds, you can come up and tell them exactly what they would spend, provided the number they give you for their spending is correct. That's the only variable where it might be off a little bit. They say, well, I'm going to spend 30,000, and they actually spend 31 or 28 or something like that. So it would vary a little bit
this
that
goes,
way.
This goes down to the thousands. This is granular down to the thousands. I initially didn't have it but to 10,000, but I added that extra zero there.
Yeah,
but
that's in 15 seconds, you can give it to them right on the button.
And when people try to ask the questions, well, what's this based on? I click on the see how it's calculated button. And up in the upper left up here is the poverty levels for one adult in the lower 48, in Alaska, and in Hawaii. The poverty level for one child in the lower 48, in Alaska, and in Hawaii. That's what the entire thing is based on. The second portion here is the variable names that I give it. A for a number of adults, C for a number of children, and so on. And then the bottom section here says this is how it's calculated. The number of adults times the adult poverty level plus the number of children times the number by the child's poverty level. That total multiplied by 23%. That is your prebate. Your prebate is 23% of your poverty level. It's that simple. Then the prebate, the gross tax dollars is your spending. And if we had $50,000, that's going to be spending times 23%. So that would give us $11,500 in gross fair tax. But that's the calculation. Very simple multiplication. Then to get your after prebate tax dollars, it's your gross tax minus your prebate. It's done. Then you take your total tax. Yeah, your total tax divided by your spending times 100, and that's your percentage. That is the entirety of what this calculator is based on. But you don't have to sit there with your calculator punching buttons trying to come up with a number and making the other person smile that he's got you off on some sidetrack. It's instant. And then I also have the reminder about the fact that it's based on spending down here, just for those people that, may be using it and not remembering all these things that aren't out there every day pushing it. So little reminders there.
Do you have the figure on how many people have downloaded this and using it?
I do not have that figure, no. I should have looked it up, but I get a few more every year. I don't make any money off of it. By the way, I did put a price, I think, of 99 cents on it, simply so we don't have the little pop-up ads. Because sure enough, if I put ads, if I made it free and they started popping up ads, flat tax supporters are going to target the calculator. So I didn't want to do that.
Well, 99 cents, I think we can afford that.
Yeah, I don't make money off of it.
I see the wheels turning in your head, Scarborough. What's your question here?
my conversation was going to be about our conversations generally that we're having with people. We're noticing that they are becoming a little more informed. They've stopped scratching the surface, watching the 90-second newscasts, reports, and things like that, where they're actually doing some considerable thinking about what the possibilities are as they go deeper into HR 25, for example. They start asking some substantive questions. And this app that John has produced gives us an opportunity to actually show how simple it is. And my question to John is, in your use of this, pick any of the conversations that you've had with people, and this is primarily for us volunteers that go out there and talk to people on a daily basis, in some cases hourly, and just in general conversation. Give us an example of the when the green light comes on in somebody's head, and you've already talked to them for a minute or two, or maybe you've seen them before, or maybe they've done some research on their own and come to you, and give us an example of an encounter that you've had with someone where this application has provided that assurance and understanding that this truly is a remarkable, revolutionary idea whose time has come and it's changed their mind.
Well, I think the big thing is that people are turned off by the idea of a sales tax, and they don't understand how it can be progressive. So that's one of the reasons I have this little section back at the back here, is to be able to point out that your prebate is basically 23% of the poverty level for your family. And everybody gets that, whether you're Bill Gates, Elon Musk, or you're John Gaver. You're going to get your family, based on your family size, you're going to get a prebate that's equal to that. So that means that everything you spend up to that point is tax-free. You're not paying tax until you have reached the poverty level in spending for your size of family. And once that green light goes on, that's like, oh, I think that's probably the biggest single thing, because I get the pushback because sales taxes are regressive. Well, most are, but this one isn't. And here's why. And that's simple equation right there. And I'll turn this calculator around and show people this is it. There is the entirety of how you calculate the fair tax. And when they see the simplicity, the other thing is when they just you're able to say, oh, $50,000, family of 2 adults and 2 children, or say $100,000, 2 adults and 2 children. So we'll just go up here real quick like that. And there we are, 13.6%. That is your tax bite. And when you can calculate these numbers instantly and quick, and it's just so simple, and you show them the calculations, it's that light comes on. Now, when I'm doing it to an audience, a larger audience, I've spoken to very large audiences, and it's hard to show them that portion of it, but I usually have that in my presentation in that case. But in the closer encounters, I like to show them this little thing right here. These are the 4 calculations. That is all that's involved in the fair tax, and it's all done by businesses and the government. You don't have to do any of those calculations yourself. It's all magic.
And I was going, because we know the old adage, picture's worth 1,000 words. Have you ever had this presentation where you're sitting there with somebody and you're showing them this application on your device? Have you ever had somebody just walk away and say, oh, that's baloney, I don't believe that, you got it all rigged?
Usually no, because I don't think I've ever had anyone do that. And I think the reason is that they started by trying to detract they didn't want me speaking because every word I spoke, the fair tax argues itself. So all I'm doing is making points, score points, score points, score points. Well, one of the best things to do to slow down somebody is doing the cherry picking and debating. They do cherry picking to try to slow you down, get you off your point.
Right.
Well, when you make a point and they try to hit you with another one and you make another point and you get hit with another one, it's like, I think I better stick with arguing the real points rather than trying to slow this guy down, because every time I challenge him, he makes another point by showing how easy it is. So.
All right. Well, John, I think we got a little over 5 minutes left in the program. I do want to touch on the books that you've written. Your latest one there is behind you, called The Tax Deception. What is
there's the book. By
Yeah,
the way, it was a #1 hot new release on Amazon when it released.
Okay, well, I know you don't want to spoil it. You want people to buy it and see what's in there, but give us a quick synopsis of what you're dealing with and how you were dealing with it.
Okay, there's 22 points that I came up with 13 originally when I wrote The Rich Don't Pay Tax, or Do They? And through the help of other people, readers who suggested, why don't you include this point or that point or something else? Also, we've had some new changes in technology since that book came out. There's, how do we tax crypto? Because crypto can be so easily hidden. So I added some more points. It's now up to 22 points for effective tax policy. And what I did was I put these 22 points in and then said, okay, how does the fair tax? Well, first off, I created these points based on problems with the current income tax. Then I compared the fair tax and the flat tax point by point. And this is what you do when you buy a car. What color do I want? Do I want 4 doors, 2 doors? Do I want 6-cylinder? Do I want an 8-cylinder? You set goals for when you buy a car. Well, you set goals for tax reform. It's one of the most proven effective ways of decision making. So basically, I've broken down tax reform into 22 points. And when you get through, it is crystal clear.
What are some of the points? Don't need to go through all 22 of them, but what are some of the major points that you're doing this comparison on?
Starts with simplicity. And nothing can be more simple. It starts with untaxing the cost of living. Again, there's your prebate. Tax crypto. In fact, how do we get around tax evasion? It's very, very difficult to evade a sales tax. 90% of retail sales comes from the big box stores, and their point of sale systems don't allow for any possibility of tax evasion. So you've automatically eliminated 90% of tax evasion. And there's just, one after the other. There's 22 different goals there. And every one is aimed at a weakness with the current income tax. And when you compare it and a flat tax, which basically there is no such thing as a flat tax. Closest thing I've ever heard was something that Louis Gohmert of Texas proposed, but he never put it in the form of a bill in Congress. I think he was too smart to do that. But the flat taxes that are out there, Ted Cruz's, Rand Paul's flat taxes, all these flat taxes were actually a flat tax with a VAT for business. So, and yet all these people, Ted Cruz, and it came out and said, oh no, it's not a VAT. But all the business publications said, yes, Ted, it's VAT. Every flat tax that's been proposed in recent years as a form of a bill in Congress has included a VAT. So there is no such thing as a pure flat tax, and they all include a standard deduction or personal exemption of some sort. So again, it's not truly flat. And we're not flat. This is a progressive sales tax.
Mm-hmm. Where people, I guess people could get that book at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, just about any place people order books.
Yes, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple, ebook store, iBook store, whatever. It's in print. It's available for Kindle, Nook, and iOS devices.
But if you buy one, write a review.
Yeah, write a review. We've had all these tremendous amounts of sales, and we've had so far 12 reviews. That's it. We had our conference call the other day. We had 16 people on the conference call, but yet we've only had 12 reviews. I think some of those people got embarrassed, and we'll probably see some more reviews here pretty soon.
I hope so. Bob, any final thoughts from North Carolina there?
It's a practical approach to the whole game of taxation, and one of the things that we're going to delve into next week are this flurry of tax cuts that the presidential candidates are raving about, but that doesn't necessarily replace what would be considered income to the federal government. They don't see it, and people don't see it as generating an opportunity for a great energy boost to the economy when you cut taxes. We do know that the hurdle that the FAIRtax has to use to get through in conversation has its own challenges when it comes to the presentation. And I think that the calculator that John has here goes a great distance in helping to overcome people's not abstinence, but questions of fairness and how it actually works. So you're applauded for that. Is there a plan for an online version that you could go to a website and have the calculation there that you could send people?
Actually, what you can do is go to the Facebook group FAIRtax 2024 in the files section. And the first thing should be FAIRtax Calc 24. Make sure it's the 24 version. And when the 25 comes out, I'll update that one too. And that's a spreadsheet, and it works the same way with little, click on the buttons and pick the numbers, and you can get the answer, and it's based on the exact same calculations.
Unfortunately, guys, we are flat out of time for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. John, thanks for your time to join us. Thank you for your service to the FAIRtax movement. I would encourage people to buy your book and download your calculator, put it on their phone, and have at it. So appreciate you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. As I say, that is going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for liking the videos, sharing the videos, and we will see you back here same time, same channel for the next edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
I'm John Gaver.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, providing you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you will demand it.
Demand it.
So tell me how it works.
It's probably changed since the last time I saw it, but the short answer would be, you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. Okay. Imagine bringing home everything you make. You don't get taxed for saving or accumulating wealth, and your boss doesn't get taxed more even if he pays you more.
Wow, see, that's amazing.
So the end result of all that is the cost of producing products and running a business goes down, so things cost less. And on top of all that, imagine every criminal, non-citizen, and under-the-table worker also paying taxes.
That's amazing.
That's the FAIRtax.